I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order, July 21st, 2014. Autumn, please call the roll.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Marmee?
Here.
Mr. Rath?
Here.
Mr. Roletta?
Here.
Mr. Blake?
Here.
Mr. Bub?
Here.
Mrs. Floyd? Here. Mr. Koss?
Here.
Mr. Guthrie? And Ms. Hall? Here.
We have everyone accounted for this evening. If you'll please rise, we have the invocation by Mr. Johnson, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
To bow your heads. O Lord, we come to you in reverence and praise. Lift us beyond our limits of our words, that we might have a vision for our community. Be with us in our deliberations. Be with those in the world and in our community who have suffered loss in this last week. And we pray for peace in the world. And may we ever serve you. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next on the agenda this evening, we have caucus. That's the time for council to discuss anything that may be on the agenda tonight or anything they have on their mind. Do we have anything? Mr. Cross, did you want to mention that was Mrs. Floyd's birthday?
I wasn't going to mention that.
Okay. Leave that alone. Happy birthday, Mrs. Floyd.
Thank you.
Next, we have the minutes of the July 7th, 2014 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Rath.
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. Next, under appointments, Mayor Hall is appointing Brian McAnally to the Board of Zoning Appeals. He will be filling the term of a past member, and his term will expire December 31st, 2016. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. We have 3 reports of standing committees this evening, one from Finance, one from Service, and one from Capital Improvements. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Also, we have a report from Barb Jobs, the City Tax Administrator, the Income Tax Revenue Report ending July 15, 2014. Without objection, that'll be received and filed. Under Communications this evening, we have 2. We have one from Paul Moran and one from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control. And once again, without objection, those will be received and filed. The Liquor Control one is a new application for a liquor license for 31 West Church Street, if anyone's interested in that. And again, without objection, those will be received and filed. Next on the agenda this evening, we have comments from citizens. There's 2 times for comments, one now before the legislation and one after. If there's anyone who would like to, come on up, give us your name for the record and your address if you would. William, you're back from vacation. It's good to see you.
It's good to be back. I'm William Butcher, 129 West Main Street. There's one concern of mine. What's going to happen to this old school? It's been empty for a long time, and I know what's going to happen to it. Another thing is, I know, I'm old-fashioned. I'm after an old police cruiser emergency light, or old traffic light, old stop sign, or old traffic meter, old orange emergency light parts recreation truck. That passed.
Thank you, William. I do believe that building, they're going to, Mr. Lehman was in, they're going to try to do, I think, 27 apartments or residences in that building. I think it's his proper tax abatement.
Okay.
Anyone else this evening? Bo?
Bo Bromberg, 14 Clarendon Street, Newark, Ohio. 2 comments. One about the legislation for the first reading about having fines for people leaving their trash dumpsters out. One, I'm just not sure that this may be the best way to improve the city of Newark is by fining people for the trash dumpster. 2, I read in the thing that it was going to be complaint oriented, but I don't see that in the legislation. Is that specifically going to be in the legislation that it has to be complaint driven? While this administration maybe is not looking to go mark trash dumpsters, that doesn't prohibit the next administration from going around and doing stuff like that. And it seems like with, fire and police short-staffed, that I don't know if it makes sense for the city to be worried about trash dumpsters. My grandfather's 98 years old. Sometimes I put his trash dumpster out when I can get to it, and sometimes it would be technically illegal under this new law. So I'm just not necessarily sure that this is the best idea for the city. And then, especially with the city council asking the city to support the government with new taxes and everything, that would be worried about trash dumpster when we're asking for more money from the citizens. And so I'm not sure that's necessarily the best idea. And then I remember also a couple of years ago, I sat in a room with a couple of you guys that are on city council with the advocate, who told the advocate you would not vote for new taxes. And so I guess kind of disappointed that some of you who told the advocate you wouldn't voted for it. So
Thank you. Anyone else? This first section of citizens' comments. Again, there's one more after legislation. Okay. We have ordinances on the first reading, 14-20.
Ordinance 14-20 by Mr. Cost, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Blake, an ordinance amending Chapter 1860 Solid Waste Collection and Disposal of the codified ordinances of the City of Newark.
14-20 will be held for a second reading. Next, we have 14-55, resolutions on the second reading.
Resolution 14-55 by Mr. Cost, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Rath, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to enter into a right to a lease agreement and easement agreement on behalf of the City of Newark for certain real property located at Levin Park, Sharon Valley Road, Newark, Ohio, parcel 054-286-350-01.000, lot 5, consisting of 21.3 acres.
You've heard the second reading of 14-55. What is your wish? Mr. Cost.
Make a motion to move 1455.
Motion by Mr. Cost.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bub. Is there any discussion on 14-55? Seeing none, Autumn, please call the roll and vote.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
And Ms. Hall?
Yes.
14-55 passes 10-0. Next, we have 14-56.
Resolution 14-56 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Rath, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
You've heard the second reading of 14-56. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Blake?
move to adopt a 1456.
Motion by Mr. Blake.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Floyd. Is there any discussion on 14-56? Seeing none, Autumn, please call the roll and vote.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
14-56 passes 10-0. Next, we have 14-57.
Resolution 14-57 by Mr. Cost, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmee, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the City of Newark to apply for financial support from the State of Ohio 2014 Nature Works Grant Fund.
You've heard the second reading of 14-57. What is your wish?
Mr. President.
Mr. Blake?
Move to adopt 1457.
Motion by Mr. Blake.
Second.
Second by Mr. Cost. Is there any discussion on 14-57? Seeing none, Autumn, please call the roll and vote.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
And Ms. Hall?
Yes.
14-57 passes 10-0. Next, we have resolutions on first reading, 14-58.
Resolution 14-58 by Mr. Blake, Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
14-58 will be held for a second reading. Next, we have 14-59.
Resolution 14-59 by Mr. Blake, Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
14-59 will be held for a second reading. And finally, this evening, we have 14-60.
Resolution 14-60 by Mr. Blake, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
And 14-60 will be held for a second reading for 2 weeks. And that concludes our legislation for this evening. Thank you. Next, we have our second section of citizens' comments or comments from citizens. Do we have anyone who would like to speak? Mr. Moran?
Thank you. Paul Moran, 63 North 4th Street. I want to deal with issues that involve upkeep here in the city. The first one is Log Pond Run. There's overgrowth of weeds, there's trash in it, branches laying throughout it. I felt the city should have a yearly plan for cleanup of this waterway that's pretty much falling into disrepair. Next, over here at Veterans Park, the Union Civil War Veterans Memorial. It was a 10-foot crystal line marble shaft. It was originally white, but now it's turning black. On the back of it, the sides, around the bottom, it's just turning black from the white. And eventually we want to lose this within our city, part of our history of our Civil War veterans. So we need some type of cleanup if possible to deal with that matter. Next, Elmwood Avenue. There was 3 houses the city tore down last year. They're long gone, but now we've got like almost mile-high weeds on those 3 lots where the houses were torn down. So I went from one eyesore to another eyesore, and I don't know what happened, but the neglect is still there. Even though the houses are gone, the properties are still neglected.
Did you say Elmwood, Mr.?
Yeah, Elmwood Avenue.
Thank you.
I have all the information here. And there's also 2 vacant houses that are in just about as shape, the yards, as those 3 lots are. So it's something to look into. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brandt. Is there anyone else for this last session of citizens' comments? Mr. Alderman?
He made me buy a newspaper, so I gotta come up here.
Okay.
6 weeks ago, a bunch of people called me up after Sunday and said, what the neighborhood forced me to go out and get a newspaper and read it. Also, I'm Tim Walden, 167 South End.
I was going to get to that.
And they try to make it look like Mayberry RV in the South End. You know, how safe it is, we'll bring kids up, no drugs. Blake said there was no streets no good out there, good down there. Neighbors who know neighbors, you know. Great. Then I was going to come up 2 weeks ago, but he wasn't here. I want to make sure he was here, so it's in case he wanted on my side. But then last night, jump on me, you know, I got here last week. Then I saw yesterday, somebody called me and said, go get the newspaper. So I went and bought a newspaper. Then I found out the South End is one of the most dangerous part of the city around. But only 101 burglaries down there. If our police department would come down and do reports, that probably would be double. I called them 3 times and I can't find no reports down there of my blue cans being missing, my steel being missing, and now some stuff out of my back would come up missing. But there's no police reports. They don't want to do it. I came home Sunday night, about a week ago, and I stood on my front porch and watched kids walk down the middle of the street, breaking in cars. I went in, got my gun, went out the front porch, and said, hey, what are you guys doing? Well, who cares? Nobody cares if we break the cars. They broke in 3 cars while I was standing on my front porch. Lucky they didn't went in my car, they'd be still laying there. My neighbors, I woke up next day, I said, hey, do you have anything stolen out of your car? They said, yeah. Lipstick, CDs, and all that stuff. I said, well, across the street's the one's in it. I asked my other neighbor, said, you had your car stolen, broken into the other night? I don't know, I better go look. Yes. Stuff was stolen out of the car. Just then the cops came flying down the street. Guy went out, flagged him down. Cops said, did you see people do that? I said, yeah. Right here, stood right here. He said, why did you call the cops? I said, what were you going to do about it? He said, well, that's true, you know, we won't do nothing about it, but we didn't see it. By the time they got down there, they'd been gone. You gotta talk about how neighbors like neighbors down there. I had put the only person I've ever turned in down the South End was 2 people. And that is a drug house across the street from me. He came over and actually threatened to kill me and my dog one night. He's lucky he's still alive. He's lucky he's in jail. Because I was walking down through the Mount Zero Liberty Park when he did that. I didn't have my firearm on me. And you want to know about safety? You know, they say safety down through here, well, just 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, safety. I challenge any one of you guys to walk down by yourself down through some alleys in North South End. Not with 50 people, not going down doing choirs and stuff like that, down doing Halloween stuff. I mean, like middle of the night, like this weekend, walk down several alleys. I guarantee you guys won't make it if you guys don't down through there. There's one alley down there, there's so much drugs down there, between 5th and 6th Street, that you won't be able to walk down through that alley. I can, because they know who I am. They know I won't take the crap off of them. They just don't make South Bend Newark Mayberry RFD and turn right around next 2 weeks later and say it's the worst place to live. Yeah, it is a little bad place down there. But don't make it look like Mayberry RFD like Blake is doing. It's really like what he just said last week. Well, they said last week. Crime is bad.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Is there anyone else for this? Yes, ma'am.
Anna Reel, 1293 Granville Road in Newark. This is more of a question. I just want clarification on this 1420, this ordinance amending, for the waste collection. And I don't know, I wasn't at the last meeting, I haven't been in meetings here for a few weeks, but I was just wondering, is it just about the trash barrels that are just sits out maybe for a day or two at neighborhoods, or is this about all trash in yards? I'm not real clear on what that ordinance is going to be or what you're proposing here.
Okay. This is not a question and answer thought, but hopefully during miscellaneous someone will answer that for you, or maybe Mr. Koss can answer that if you stick around just a minute.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And the other thing, just so you know, or can I have a comment after I hear what you got to say about it?
No.
Okay, so may I just say it?
Sure, say it
All
now.
right, thank you. I don't like to see barrels out, but there are times, like mine, by the time within 2 hours after they pick it up, I'm home, I just pick it up, put it back. But there are times if I have to go away, it may be there several hours, And I don't like to see them lay out for, several days myself. But I would rather see that than trash in people's yards. I think if, the council's going to be worried about, our appearance in our town, my proposal would be, or ask you to consider, people's trash. I'll give you an example. You see a lot of yards, and I know there's a lot of people unemployed, and economy's bad, and some people just can't afford it. We can all be clean and pick up after ourselves. And what I hate to see, and I think ruins our city, is the trash that's actually like a whole bunch of toys stacked up, boxes. And let me give you one example on Granville Road, which is a fairly nice neighborhood. You walk down, or you drive down, there's been a house that moves, family or whatever moved in a few years, whether it's 2 or 4 or 5 years ago, I don't remember. But when they first moved in, their carport, there's no garage here, they have a carport. They had a whole bunch of stuff out there, and I just assumed that they were moving in, and it takes time. I've been through that transition, especially if you remodel your home. However, boxes and stuff are still piled on the road, and that's a disaster. I mean, it's so distractive. It's not attractive at all to drive down and you see these nice houses and you got these boxes, and I'm really just amazed that nobody's even complained about it. So if you're going to be concerned about what's out in front of people's homes, I say let's look at people cleaning up after themselves and making our community more attractive than what it is, because There's a lot of places in Newark, even nice places, where it's really looks trashy. That's my comment. Thank you so much for
This
allowing me.
14, I will say, this 1420 is on the first reading tonight. It won't be voted on for 2 weeks. So
Oh, okay.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation in the next couple
But I
of weeks, too.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
But thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone from the, hurry up, Wayne. I was wondering if you were going to do the weather. I didn't know what to work on.
Yeah, we'll do the weather.
My name is Dwayne Butcher, 120 West Main Street. The reason why I got this around me, I was just saying about the Flint Festival from a long time ago. And I'd like to see that brought back. Because that there told the whole story. Behind told the entire story about the city of Newark. It's rich, heritage, where it really came from, how he got his name. And I'd see that brought back right down here on the square. Because there was a lot of entertainment down there. There was a lot of music, food, music, a whole lot of stuff you can do. I'd see that brought back. And I really miss that, and a lot of people told the story and everything else. That's one thing I'd see brought back. Flint Festival, on the square. And my top of 10 forecast, mostly tomorrow, high about 91, but chance of rain by the middle of next week. When my top of 10 forecast, go to Sparks Facebook page, you'll see it right there. And I'm thinking about getting the Greenwood Sparks Council's credit, get all the ground that I passed.
Thank you, Wayne. Anyone from the administration this evening? Mr. Spurgeon, Safety Director.
Good evening, Mr. President. I'd just like to give the body a quick update on the good works of our folks up on the fourth floor in property maintenance. As you know, we have recently executed round 2 of the Ohio Moving Forward grant dollars, and with Director Motter's collaboration, and Mark, I do appreciate your help, we've torn down 9 additional structures, pushes us up over to 50 less magnets for negative behavior, 50 opportunities to make our community safer. On the property maintenance side, we ran some numbers for the first half, and just compared to last year, we're up over 100 inspections. Our tax assessments were up over $7,000. That's the assessments. On the revenue collections, we're up over $12,000. That's money directly deposited into the public treasury. And on fines and fees assessed, we went from $60,000 to $180,000. So under Mayor Hall's watchful eye, with your continued support, we will do our best to make sure our neighborhoods are safe and we'll maintain property values. Thank you.
Mr. Spurgeon. Anyone else from the administration? The Honorable Law Director.
Thank you, Mr. President, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Stassen. Mayor Hall.
Just a quick comment. On Thursday, I was invited to Columbus and did a roundtable with 11 other mayors from Central Ohio, and kind of looking to the future as they expect about 500,000 people move into Central Ohio, and how the communities will be ready to receive those. Good dialogue and good teamwork, and I think they'll build a lot of good relations for the future as we move forward. So it's kind of a large growing part of the country in the Midwest, and they expect that to keep going that way. So all positive stuff. 500,000 people create a lot of jobs that were created, and the housing as it goes. So we kind of want to be ready as we move into that. I will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Johnson.
I'll pass.
All this time you've been waiting to go first. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a comment, since trash was brought up. I believe that the majority of the intent of the legislation is to take care of the issues of just trash being around and overflowing bins and so on and so forth. I know that there's been a lot of discussion, and Mrs. Floyd is probably going to recommend a change in language. She's debating on which direction to go, and I know she's been working very hard at that, so that it's not a specific timed, because a lot of folks have been mentioning that, and that wasn't the intent of this legislation. It seems like the focus drew to that, and really that wasn't what the intent of the legislation was. So I believe you're going to see a change to that. In particular, she's already commented during our meeting that elderly folks sometimes like to put it out real early the day before so they don't have to go out at night, so on and so forth. And Bo, your situation with your grandfather, that is what, it's not going to be something that is, that's not the focus of this. In addition to comment on Bo's comments as far as complaint driven, it's not directly in the legislation, but really it has not been assigned to anybody. The police department, it's not something that's going to be assigned to the safety forces or anything along those lines, so it's pretty much just going to come in as a complaint. We're not going to have folks out looking. Could that happen in the future? I think that would be a foolish use of resources like you commented, and I don't know if it would even be, if we did put it in the legislation, if the administration wanted to change it to have police officers do something, I believe they could probably do that anyway. So just there's a couple comments that I have on that particular issue. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmy. Mr. Rapp?
Thank you. I want to start out with saying happy birthday to Carol Floyd, since I hear it's your birthday. Lots of comments tonight. As far as the new taxes that you mentioned, Bo, I know I didn't vote, cast any vote to raise taxes on any citizen in Newark. I certainly did cast a vote that allowed the citizen to decide whether they wanted to increase taxes for a specific use or not. But that's up to the citizens and that's up to the voting body. I don't have a problem with giving citizens a choice. I do have a problem with me making a choice for them in regards to taxes. So I did not vote to raise taxes. I voted to give the citizens a choice, just to let you know that. As far as the trash thing goes, yeah, I read all the comments of the advocate and been talking with neighbors and whatnot, and you're right, everybody is focusing on the time frame. And to be honest with you, that was the one thing I talked about when I walked out of here, because I know Thursday nights is my wife and I's night to go out to dinner, and that's our trash night. And there's a lot of times we're not back from going out Thursday night until it's past time to take the trash out. I'm not real worried about that because it is complaint driven. The spirit of that part of the ordinance is to basically tell people, bring your trash materials in. It's not supposed to be out there 7 days a week. It's not, the side of the road is not the place to store your trash barrel. Bring it into your house. And that's basically what we're trying to do, is educate people. Don't leave your trash barrel on the side of the road. So because everybody's worried about that narrow time frame, if you want to, I know you're working on a change, I'll just let you know, if you want to change that to 24 hours before to 24 hours prior, meaning they've got 72 hours to leave their barrel on the side of the road, but they can't leave it out there all week, I'd be in support of that. That's fine. And then to comment on Mrs. Reel's comments, we already have trash issues in yards covered. And we have that very thoroughly. So if you see trash in yards, call the property maintenance department, register a complaint, and within 48 hours, if they haven't cleaned up the trash, we'll clean up the trash and assess them with a cost for that. Now, that does not include items that people own that are stored outside their house in a manner that you don't approve of. That's personal choice, and we're not going to legislate that. But if there's trash in the yard, certainly call the property maintenance department, register a complaint. We'll put a notice on their door. Within 48 hours, if they haven't cleaned it up, we'll go out there and clean it up for them, and then they get a nice little bill of mail. So we worked on that and improved that, and that's been working very efficiently for the last year or so. And then on a positive note, the urban deer hunting program is about to kick off again. Applications will be ready around the beginning of August, and they're due by the beginning of September, I believe. So if you know of anybody that is interested in hunting within the city of Newark, within the rules, within the laws, they have to do that between basically the month of August is when they have to register for that. If there's properties that want that you want hunted on, you can register those properties. You can call Sergeant McKee at the police department. He's the one that's in charge of that. Or if you want to ask me about it, I can tell you what I know about it. And that's it. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Rapp. Mr. Roletta?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'd like to congratulate my good friend Jacob Rapp, who is a resident of the 4th Ward. He's a small business owner. He runs a food truck called the Mixing Bowl. He was recently on NBC4 doing an interview, and he told me he'll also be doing some of the food for the Columbus Crew games and the OSU home game. So I want to congratulate him on how well his business is doing. Second, I would like to mention in regards to the cell phone tower agreement at Levin Park. I think it would be a great idea for us to possibly earmark that revenue to start a summer youth program for our parks to help young people progress academically and stay physically active over the summer months. And lastly, I would like to announce the 4th Ward Block Watch Group will be meeting at 6:30, 592 West Main Street on Tuesday, July 29th. That passed.
Thank you, Mr. Roletta. Mr. Blake?
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I'm trying to get my thoughts together here.
Well, say hello to your mother for me.
Hello, Mom. Thank you for that lead-in, Mr. President. I would have gotten in trouble later on this evening. Well, first of all, I just want to say that as a sponsor of the trash legislation, it's been a joy to work with Mayor Hall's team and then also with Director Sasson. You know, I think for those of you that might have missed last committee meeting, the Computer Society manages our YouTube channel. So if you get an opportunity to go to youtube.com and type in Newark City County, you can watch that committee meeting from last week, in which I think there was some good discussion on the trash legislation. There's a lot of question and answers were given back and forth, and so if your questions aren't here answered tonight, then feel free to go back and always look at that video, because I think that's a good resource. So you and your Computer Society, thank you very much for recording these meetings so that we can have that opportunity to do that. I agree with several of the others. I mean, the focus has sort of gone to the timing of the thing, and that wasn't the gist of it. I mean, to be quite frank, I think when Director Sasson pulled out the legislation, we just took this timing that was in there and introduced the legislation. So we really didn't consider the timing. It wasn't as though we were going to send out a police officer to time out when people's trash barrels were out and things of that nature. I mean, the intent was to make sure that is neighborhood appearance and to make sure that people are having trash hauling service, and so that was the broad goal. I mean, for the policy of the city of Newark is for everyone to have trash service. And I think some people have had concerns about even the word contract. I mean, it could be as simple as, if you are challenged, if someone files a complaint against you, you can have a cash check to show that you have trash service. A contract doesn't need to be a multi-page thing. I mean, I've heard some comments about that. Oh, well, I need to get into a contract with somebody. Well, it could just be some type of payment to show that you have it. Once again, but those comments and questions, we had good dialogue at the committee meeting, and so I encourage people to go back and look at that video. And then, of course, over the next 2 weeks, I'm sure we'll have some amendments that I've already heard about, so I look forward to that further discussion. I do have to say something about, I think there's all kinds of different people in our city, and some look at the glass as half empty, and some look at it as half full. I'm proudly sitting here tonight with a button that says South End Pride, South Newark Civic Association. Our website is mysouthendnewark.org. We have some South Enders. Obviously, Mr. Walger is a South Ender. Mr. Daniel Crawford is a South Ender. My mom is a South Ender. And all three of them live on the 2nd Street. If you ask each of them their opinions of the neighborhood, I'm sure you'll get different answers. But the thing that I want to focus on is that I do think that my neighborhood is a good place to live. I do think that we want to encourage people to buy a home in our neighborhood. I do think we want that not only in my neighborhood or the South End, but in all our city. We want to encourage people to buy a home and to live and raise their family and work here. I mean, that's the purpose of what we're trying to do, is provide good services for our citizens, for people who will move here, invest in our community, and to work in our community. And so if I take and make comments related to that manner, I have no disregard for that, because I'm going to promote the neighborhood and promote the city the best I can. And specifically to regarding the 101 crime number that I think you have to understand that the boundaries for the second ward go from 2nd Street all the way to 30th Street. They include the downtown area, and so it's not just the South End neighborhood that is in the 2nd ward. There is a large commercial district area that is in the 2nd ward, and again, it extends all the way over to 30th Street. So you're including neighborhoods around William Street, around Union Street corridor, and so it is not just the South End that is included in that statistic that the advocate reported on. There are some commercial districts in there that would, and these are property crimes that what they reported on Sunday. So, but again, even with that article, I will say to you, I am glad to live in the South End. I've been a South Ender for 5 generations, and I'm happy to see that South Enders always attend this meeting and always give me a phone call and email. And again, you know, I wear the button, I wear it proudly, and actually this Saturday in Little Texas, there is a picnic at noon at the Florence Coble Community Park, and it's hosted by Trinity Truth Tabernacle Church, but all are welcome to come, and that's at noon on Saturday at the Florence Coble Park. And so I think I've said enough, Mr. President, and with that I'll pass, and just proud to be a South Ender.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Mr. Bell. I'll pass, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bell. Mr. Cost?
I think one thing we want to try to remember, the trash problem that we're dealing with comes in several forms. I see a lot of improvement over the last couple of years in what property maintenance is doing to try to clean up trash in general. Joe Paul and his group have done a nice job, and we've come a long ways. I think what this ordinance that we're working on, we're trying to update a piece of legislation that is 30 years old, and we're trying to bring it up to something current. And to me, the biggest element of it is making sure that everyone has trash service, so that we're not only combating trash that's sitting out front in a pile, we're trying to make sure that people have trash service, that we can have things hauled away and keep the city looking better than it has in the past. And I think that's the goal. It's not about policing people's properties or looking at your watch to see what time the trash is set out or picked up. It's trying to clean up how the city looks. I'm proud to say that we're moving along with it. I think it's a good start. We'll get a few tweaks in this and get it ironed out, but I think it's a positive thing. Thank you. I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Cost. Mrs. Floyd?
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Jerry McLean and Doubletree downtown. It's really exciting to see that nice a facility in downtown, and the fact that the first 48 hours it was online, they had 129 reservations, wasn't that right? And I mean, that bodes well, I think, for the future of Newark. There are lots of activities here that bring people into Newark to stay, whether it's the Settlers games or things at the Midland or things at OSU Newark or whatever. You know, I think those are things that are very valuable. On the trash, which has been talked and talked and talked. I agree with Mr. Cost and what other people have said, that the basic purpose is that every property have trash collection. I mean, that was the basic purpose of the legislation. The times are in here, and there are times in our property maintenance code as well. I'm going to tell you what I am thinking about, and then you can let me know personally whether you think this is workable or not. I get complaints all the time from people who are not happy with their neighbors because their neighbors leave their trash cans out day after day after day, and they just take their trash out front and dump it in. And obviously, that doesn't look very nice going down the street. So what I'm thinking of is, to the extent practical, each container shall be placed at the curbside the day before the scheduled collection and shall be removed from curbside either the day of collection or the day after collection. So you think about that and you tell me what you think is right. To me, it seems the day after collection might give some people flexibility. I put my trash out last Thursday, and Friday I came home and my trash had been collected, but I got busy doing something else and I forgot it, and so I went out Saturday morning and took it back. And obviously this is, you know, you're only going to have an issue if your neighbor calls you in and says, you left your trash out an extra 3 hours. To me, I think we need some flexibility because, as Mr. Bromberg said, you know, there are people who we've got a lot of senior citizens in Newark who either need help taking it out or have someone else do it for them, or when they're out during the day, they want to be able to take it out and just leave it there and not worry about it. And it seems to me the more flexible we make it, the better. But let me know whether you want to do the day of collection or the day after collection. And that's what I'll propose in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Floyd. Mr. Guthrie.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm glad that Carol mentioned Jerry McLean because I believe some of the other members of council were present for the ribbon cutting at Doubletree. I know that for sure that Carol and Mayor Hall and I were there, and it's certainly another of many proud accomplishments by Jerry McLean. And one thing, and I know that we all have known Jerry for a long time. I've probably known him for 35 years. And I have always admired the fact that he's someone who, he hasn't hesitated taking risk to promote his community. I mean, he has taken a significant financial risk to promote his community. And that really speaks well to someone, and I really admire that man, and along with many others who've done good things for our community. But I just wanted to say that I'm very grateful to Jerry McLean for what he's done. I want to thank the mayor. I'm working with the mayor and Jennifer on putting some recognition together for Special Olympics, and hopefully here in a couple of weeks we're waiting for some information back. We have several Newark area Special Olympians who had great achievements this year at the Ohio Games, and I think it'd be very nice if we can recognize them, and the mayor's going to be working on a proclamation of some sort. The community gardens, several of us went down with the community gardens a few weeks ago, and they're coming along nicely, and you always have to, thank Dave and Jim for their effort there, along with all the people that are involved in the community gardens. They're just a real compliment to their neighborhoods. I want to thank everybody, of course, who spoke before council tonight, but I want to let Ms. Reel know, I think you know now, folks are listening and are we care about this issue, and we appreciate you very much coming, and along with the others. And I, hopefully, maybe Mr. Spurgeon, you can have the property maintenance folks look at those weeds on Elmwood that were raised tonight. The comments regarding South Newark, I really think that, and this is my last point, I know that we please. I really want to commend not only Jeremy, but that community for working as hard as they are to lift themselves up. I mean, I really think, and I've said this many times in this council chambers, that we have to do everything we can to lift up our neighborhoods. And you guys are doing a spectacular job there. The Hudson Avenue group is doing a great job there. We need more people using the approach that the South End Association is using. And I really encourage everyone to take a look at a Columbus Dispatch article, and I'm not sure whether it was today or yesterday, but regarding the city of Whitehall. Was it today? They have, and I'm not sure where they got the pool of money, but they established a pool of money to give matching grants in neighborhoods to help people improve the outside of their homes. And I think, to me, that is a concept I'd like to see us look at. Because as we know, it's very expensive to make significant improvements on the outside of one's homes. But if maybe there were a little bit of help, and maybe it's something we can maybe even talk to the foundations about getting some seed money to help us with some kind of a program like that. But I do, I do think that it goes in with that concept of lifting up neighborhoods. Because we can do, we're doing great things downtown. But we can do all these wonderful things downtown, and if we don't help lift up our neighborhoods, to me, it's not going to put the entire puzzle together, which I think as a council and administration, we need to work together to put it all together. And that includes lifting up neighborhoods like the South End, the East End, the North End, and the West End. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guthrie. Ms. Hall.
I'll pass, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Just a few housekeeping notes. Our next committee will be next Monday, the 28th at 5:30 here in this room. Our next council meeting will be again on Monday, August the 4th at 7, also here in this room.
Oh, Mr. President, I didn't call for finance. So
Okay, the Finance Committee.
before you adjourn, did you, okay.
We made it. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate your comments. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Leno. All in favor, say aye.